Welcome to the fourth episode of the Sub 220 Marathon Project video series. Matt here from Sweat Elite. This video series is a weekly video series of the 12 weeks leading into the Berlin Marathon 2022, where I'll be trying to break the 2-hour, 20-minute barrier for the fourth time, of which 3 attempts have gotten me quite close to 20:46 in November last year, and then 2 DNFs since then. Did not finish, that is, due to muscle cramping. And of course, this video series shares insights into how I'm trying to overcome those muscle cramping issues that have forced me to stop during the marathons. And of course, just trying to simply lower my time to under 2:20, taking off 47 seconds would be 2:19:59. So the fourth week of training was an interesting one. It was a little bit dramatic. There was a couple of very rough days in training, and then there was quite a few decent days. So I'll go through the entire week in training via the Strava log shortly after I answer some of the most common or most popular questions that have come through over the last week via the YouTube channel or via social media and email. Every week I'm going to pick 2 or 3 questions that I've enjoyed and answer those questions, so I'll answer them shortly. But before I do that, I want to thank the sponsors of this video series that are making the whole thing happen. My favorite running apparel brand, Soar Running, and they were my favorite running apparel brand before asking them to be the sponsor of this video series. Lightweight, breathable, engineered for speed and cut for racing, Soar Running apparel has saved me in the warm weather over the last couple of months in training. They supply all the training gear that you see in this training video. I'm a huge fan of their gear. As I've mentioned about 1,000,000 times already in this series, I sweat a lot, and their gear is super light, super breathable, so it doesn't seem to get really heavy. It doesn't retain the sweat and doesn't get heavy as I'm running like other brands do. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of Soar, and I really recommend you check out their range of gear, which is also really engineered for winter training and racing as well. So you can check out more about Soar in the link in the description of this video. The second sponsor of this video series is one of Europe's most popular running retail stores, supplying me with all of the running, shoes, trainers, and races in this video series, Top4 Running. Low prices, the best brands in the world, all the latest models that you'll find at Top4 Running. They've supplied me with a range of shoes that I'm actually currently testing at the moment, from Adidas to Asics to Nike to On Running and New Balance. And I'm going to be doing a shoe review very soon as I'm testing out all of these different trainers and races, so stay tuned for that in an upcoming episode. But I'm a huge fan of Top4 Running, and I'm really appreciative of their support of this YouTube video series. And you can find more information about Top4 Running in the link in the description. And you can also score a small discount, a further discount on the already low prices at Top4 Running by using the code SWEATELITE, in which you can find the link to that and the code in the video description as well. Okay, before we get into the training week, the 3 questions that I've enjoyed come my way this week. Number 1, how do you adjust your paces in training to the altitude and the heat? So that's a really good question without a very straightforward answer, because it's very individual from what I understand. Now, I'm no expert in this field, so what I'm about to say may not be 100% accurate, but from everything I've gathered and seen, the way that people adjust to altitude is quite individual. I think I'm relatively average. When I first arrive at this current altitude, which is around 1,600 meters, 5,300 feet, I would estimate that I'm hindered by around 10 seconds per kilometer or 15, 16 seconds per mile. Complete rough guess. That's about how it feels. As I've been here longer and longer, I've been here for 2 months straight now, I feel like it's about half that. About 5 seconds per kilometer or 7 to 8 seconds per mile. Again, a wild guess, just based purely on feel. I travel quite a bit for work, obviously, and when I do go down to sea level, I feel like it's around about that sort of difference in pace/effort. But everyone's different. I do know of some people that have come to train at altitude that have never felt like they've really adjusted. And I feel like some people, I think it also depends on if you're born at altitude as well. If you're born at altitude and spend a significant period of your life at high altitude, you'll adjust very quickly, or your adjustment period might not even be there at all. You might immediately adjust, or your adjustment will be very, very small, only a couple of seconds per kilometer. But for me, I use a rough rule of thumb now of around about 5 seconds per kilometer or around 8 seconds per mile. Add in the heat, of which I know I complain about that in every single episode, I'm aware of it. I would say it's around about the same again, around about 5 seconds per kilometer for the heat and humidity. Although it's not typically too humid up here, but it's very warm. By 7:38 in the morning, it's already in the mid 70s, high 70s typically, which is 25 degrees Celsius. And being a heavy sweater, that's obviously going to raise my heart rate, my lactate levels. So I feel like it's probably around about the same. So my paces are adjusted about 10 seconds per kilometer, 16 seconds per mile as if I wanted to hit a certain pace at sea level in cool conditions or average conditions, I would adjust it by around about that. But again, no expert in this field. That's just what I gather and what my rough best guess is. Okay, question number 2. What is your diet like, and do you take any supplements? I would say my diet is dead average. I enjoy pizza and pasta. I occasionally will eat junk food. I am a big fan of fruit though. I tend to eat at least 3 servings a day of fruit. I'm a big fan of berries, just purely for the taste. I know they're very healthy too, specifically blueberries and strawberries. I tend to eat a lot of them every day, and I try and get at least 1 or 2 servings of vegetables. I would say my diet is very average. Nothing special about it. I don't like seafood at all, and I never have, so that's one, I guess, specific difference for, most people do incorporate seafood into their diet. And that actually bridges the topic to supplements. I do take a fish oil tablet every day, or at least 2 actually, of the omega-3s with EPA and DHA, I believe it's called. And I also take a magnesium and calcium supplement that Now Sports have supplied me with. Now Sports reached out recently and supplied a range of supplements which I've been using. Pretty standard stuff: a protein, whey protein isolate drink, a carbohydrate drink, a maltodextrin drink, of which you'll learn a little bit more about that very soon in the footage from the long run that we did this week, and an electrolyte tablet that I just mix in water, which is just a very standard tablet similar to the Noon ones. That's just sodium, magnesium, nice flavor as well, obviously, and that's all. So pretty simple, but I do think I might make a episode in the near future pretty much focus in on supplements and diet, because it's obviously more specifically fueling for a marathon and what you should be eating in the lead up to and during. There's a little sneak peek into that in this episode as well before the long run, but I'll go more into that topic in a further episode. Question number 3. This gives me the opportunity to plug a company that I recently joined in Best Athletics. A close friend of mine, Nick Bester, started Best Athletics about 1.5 years ago now, and it's already well over 100 clients, which I'm coaching a little over 10. And yes, I have coached runners most of my adult life, on and off, depending on if I have the time to, or if my friends are racing. It's typically been close friends, but as of the last few years, I have coached people outside of my friendship circle. And yes, Best Athletics do have capacity for more people training for full marathons, half marathons, 10Ks, or if you're simply trying to get fit. And I do have a small amount of capacity at the moment to take on new clients. And you can find out more about Best Athletics and what it all involves in the link in the description of this video. So we're going to go over the Strava log. That is the week of training of the 4th week of the marathon specific training block. It started off with an 18-mile run at Magnolia Road, or according to Strava, just under 18 miles. Sometimes the watch distance does not sync exactly to Strava, so it was 17.92 on Strava. At 7:06 per mile pace, which is a little over 4:20 per kilometer, and honestly, anyone that's been to Magnolia Road and run up there, which is significantly higher altitude and very, very hilly, will know that you have to adjust your pace and effort significantly up there. It's about 2,600 meters elevation from what I understand. I think that's over 8,000 feet or thereabouts. And I would say it's at least 30-40 seconds per mile slower than even running in Boulder. So I ran 7:06 per mile, and that honestly was probably a little bit faster than it should have been. Every alternative week leading into the marathon, Rick likes to schedule, so every second week we do a fast, or at least we finish fast, long run on the flat, where the last 10K, for example, or even more, will be at goal marathon pace or effort, depending on the conditions. But every other week we do a run that's a little bit slower or hilly or at higher altitude. So this was one of those weeks, and we did 18 miles at 7:06, as I mentioned, which I reckon we probably should have pulled the pace back a little bit on that one. I was very tired afterwards and took Monday completely off. I hadn't had a day off for 3 weeks, so I think it was 3 weeks. So I think that I really needed one, and I felt very tired that day and glad I took the day off. But then on Tuesday, I had a very average workout. In fact, I had to completely change the workout because I was still so tired from that run. The workout was supposed to be 3 miles, 2 miles, 1.5 miles, 1 mile, and then half a mile, cutting down from marathon goal pace down to about 5K pace at the end, roughly, with around 2 to 3 minutes rest. But I started at 5:26 pace in the 3 miles, and that felt like 5:15, 5:20 pace. And I knew that something was up then. I knew that I felt very tired. In fact, I even felt quite tired in the warm-up. So after that, I tried to do the 2 mile with Nell, who was doing a 2 mile time trial at around just over 5-minute pace. And after 1 mile, I dropped out. I ran 5:02, felt like it was 4:50, and asked Rick what he thinks I should do. Should I finish up or continue? And he said he recommends that I do 3 by a mile after that mile that I dropped out at around threshold effort, not too hard. So I did that. I managed 5:20 to 5:24 off 2 minutes, and even that was pretty hard. I wasn't too concerned about this because I knew that I'd done 3 weeks in a row of very high mileage for me, around that 85 to 90 miles. I've never done anything like that before in terms of 3 weeks in a row at that sort of mileage, and I knew that I was tired. So I wasn't too concerned about that. I think you should only become concerned about workouts that don't go poorly when you've done 3 or 4 of them in a row that don't go to plan and you have to adjust. I think at that point, that's when you have to start to maybe make some bigger adjustments. But Rick did tell me the following day to go out and run easy for however long I feel like I should. So my idea was to run 30 to 40 minutes easy, but if I felt good, just run a little bit further and just go to gut feel. So the next day I did a morning run of 10K, 6.34 miles at 7:09 per mile. And in the afternoon, Rick suggested I do another 10K at around about the same effort. But again, I went out the door thinking if I feel terrible, I'm just going to run 30 minutes, but I ran 10K. On Thursday, 12.5 miles at 6:49 per mile. I felt great that day. Pretty surprising given on Monday and Tuesday I felt so tired, and 2 days later I felt completely recovered. So that's interesting. I don't think I recall ever bouncing back so quickly from such a short period where I felt so tired. But it was a lot cooler that day and overcast, so the pace of 6:49 was mainly due to it just being a lot cooler. It's amazing how much of a difference that can make for someone like myself. On Friday, we did a long run. Now, the reason why we did the long run on Friday was because the plan for next week is to do a time trial on Friday of 10K, and we wanted at least 7 days recovery in between. So this was one of those weeks where the long run was at marathon effort towards the end. So 22 miles, it was actually 20 miles with a warm-up, a mile warm-up and a mile cool down, starting at around 6:30 pace and building down to around 5:40 pace. I did this with Luis Orta and Nell Rojas. Luis did 12 miles of it, and Nell did 18 miles, of which she pulled back once the pace really picked up towards the end because Nell's currently not in marathon training block. So yeah, we started at 6:33, sat around that 6:20 to 6:15 for a little while there. You can see the splits on the screen. And then we went a little bit under 6-minute pace all the way through to 21, or if you're talking about the 20-mile block through to the end. Luis really pushed. Luis jumped in, I think, at the 5-mile mark from what I recall, or midway through the 4th mile, and went through to the 19th mile. And he threw in a few quick miles at mile 18 and 19, which I felt fine at that point. But when he dropped out and finished he did a 13-mile run, not 12. When he finished his 13-mile run at 19 and I had 2 left, very quickly I fell apart. And you'll see footage of that after this summary. In the last couple of miles, I was hemorrhaging, and I very quickly went from feeling decently to really struggling. That was probably as a result of the heat. Once again, I probably ran out of carbs. I was also quite dehydrated towards the end there, and I did start cramping a little bit as I got home in my calves. Not during though, which is a good sign. So that was a good long run given the conditions. I was really happy with that. And yeah, you'll see footage of that long run and how I prepared nutrition-wise beforehand after this summary. And then on Saturday, a recovery run of which I recovered pretty well and ran 10 miles at 7:24 pace with some friends, and actually felt better than I thought I would. So that's a good sign. And the week was 81 miles. So a bit of a drop down. As I've mentioned before, I don't really worry or track mileage too much. I keep a very, I overlook it, to some extent, but I don't ever go and chase a certain amount. I did take the full day off on Monday, and Tuesdays was cut back from what it was planned to be. So I lost a little bit of mileage there, and the cool down on Tuesday was a lot shorter than it should have been. We tend to do quite long warm-ups and cool downs. So a little bit of a cutback in mileage this week. Not concerned about that at all. Probably be up around that 85 to 90 or maybe even more next week. And looking forward to getting to the 5th week of training next week and feeling pretty good. So 4 weeks down, only really 7 weeks to go because the last week is taper week, and it's not a hell of a lot of hard training in that week. So really time to buckle down now and make sure that we're ticking these boxes in training and trying to avoid what happened on Tuesday as much as possible, although that's bound to happen sometimes, and really trying to listen to the body and make sure that these little niggles that pop up here and there, for example, my Achilles is getting a little bit sore sometimes, which I've dealt with for years, just being careful to manage that and do the relevant exercises in the gym. But I hope that you enjoy the footage from the long run on Friday, the long progressive run with Luis Orta and Nel Rojas. Good morning. So it's 6:10. We've got a long run starting at 7. So I'm actually doing this a little bit later than I would have normally do it. I just slept in, to be honest. I woke up a little bit later than I would have liked to. But this is what I'm going to prepare for before, during and after the long run today. I've got 20 miles. It's going to be broken down into a block of 6 miles, 6 miles and 8 miles. So this is the second sort of long, somewhat specific marathon run. It's not at marathon pace because we're at altitude and it's quite hot. So we're adjusting the paces a little bit, and it won't be quite near marathon pace, but it won't be too far off at the end. So we've got 6 miles at around 6:30 pace, 6:30, 6:40, which is around 4 minutes per kilometre, and 6 miles is around 10k. 6 miles, the second 6 mile block is at around 6:10 to 6:20 pace, which is getting down near sort of 3:50, 3:55 per kilometre. And we've got 8 miles to finish off with. That's the part that's getting closer to marathon effort, I guess. Which I'm not exactly sure what that's going to be. I hope for it to be around 3:35, 3:40 per k, a little under 6 minute mile pace for 8 miles. But it's very humid this morning. It's about 85% and almost 20 degrees Celsius. And if any of you have paid attention to the other videos, I struggle in the heat. But anyway, that's what we're preparing for. So we've got about 45, 50 minutes before I'm going to eat. Cooper Tier once said that in the new generation video that the key to a good long run is to eat a bit of a bagel. I'll eat half of that. Just bread, carbohydrates, and a bit of banana. Cut this bite out. And what I'm going to drink before. So Now Sports, who I'd seen around quite a bit. I know Josh Kerr's sponsored by them, but they were kind enough to send some product. This is just maltodextrin, even though it looks a bit intimidating by the word carbo gain. But Maurten is predominantly maltodextrin. They've got their own little formula going on in there, but I'm going to essentially make a similar product to Maurten myself, not quite as good. I'm going to mix this carbohydrate drink, which is maltodextrin, with a electrolyte tablet, which is just the sodium, magnesium and potassium and the electrolytes. I'll have a bit of that before, when I'm driving there to Boulder Reservoir, and during to fuel. And afterwards, I'll have again, a bit intimidating with the size of the thing, but it's just a protein drink. I've had this a few times in the last week. I really like the flavour. So I'll have that afterwards. And just to make sure I've got enough magnesium in the system and sodium, I'm going to have this tablet before, just with the meal, coffee and a bit of salt. I'll find that somewhere. And yeah, that's what I'm doing before and during. And I'll also take a gel, 1 or 2 during. They're downstairs. I don't really have a preference for gels, so I just have anything. I think I've got goo ones downstairs, so I'll have 2 of them. Probably after the first 6 miles and after the second 6 miles. So yeah, this should be fun. I think I'm running with Nel. Luis Orta might come. I'm not sure. He said that he's just getting back into it. So 2:16 marathoner, 63 half guy. So yeah, should be good fun. Second long hard specific run of 5. So see how we go.
So
Okay.
we're going the same route as we did last.
Yeah, the same route.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Minus 4 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And as long as you're running downhill the last 6 miles
Yeah.
or so, that's really my concern. So you can open it up a little bit. All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool.
So I'm going, and that was a bit
shocked when she arrived and I saw that I had alpha flies on, so she's had to.
He usually doesn't have his alpha flies on, so I'm like, oh no, should have consulted. Oh well.
So you've leveled up and got the,
I've leveled
get
up.
the meta speeds on. So
I've meta speeds.
see
Just
how we go.
yeah.
All right, let's get started.
If you break it down per mile, per shoe, it's like $5 a mile. to run an alpha flies,
It's
right?
an expensive run.
Yeah.
22
Worth it,
miles.
Worth it. Yeah.
All right,
Okay,
All
guys.
right.
let's get going.
All right. This morning, they're both in different phases of their build-ups, but we were able to mesh them together today for a long run. And this is the first of Nell's enhanced long runs. So she'll start off with a little warm-up. Then she'll go 6 miles at a run, maybe let's say 6:30 pace. Then she'll go 6 miles at a tempo, and then she's going to push the last 6 miles for a total of 18 miles, a little bit more intense, with a warm-up and a cool-down. But she's got, we're a good 17 weeks out, I think, right now for New York City. And Matt's got less, like 8 weeks. So this should be a hard run for him. This should be a good test for him. This should be one of those, a few runs where we run really hard, push the pace the last 6 to 8 miles. So the idea is to simulate what it's going to feel like a marathon at altitude here, over 6 to 8 miles. And also get a long run in. Yeah, 12 would be good. I mean, you're going to be doing 12 today anyway, so.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Okay,
Is Nell
this
with
is
him? Oh yeah.
There's their warm-up, and they got a bicycle with them too, so it's an entourage this
I
morning.
see
They got
that.
a team.
Big crew.
Team going. So,
Sorry, we're a little bit late, dude.
Take your time.
Well, not really.
So we're about 5 miles in. We've been around for 6:30, I guess. First mile just over 7, and yeah, we'll stick to this for a couple more miles, and then depending on how Nell's feeling, we might pick it up a little bit. Because I think Nell's second 6 mile block was supposed to be 6:20s, so we'll see how we go. But so far so good. It's relatively, well actually, this next 4 or 5 miles is slightly uphill, but nothing too crazy. And then we'll do a few loops out and back on a section that's got a few small hills. But then the last 6 miles will be slightly downhill, losing maybe 10 to 20 meters per K, or 30, 40 feet per, 50 feet per mile. I think that's about what it is. On the way back, that is, as in elevation loss.
Yeah. Good job, Brian.
Thank you. Good job for you guys. Yeah, just a casual bike ride this morning.
Good. Get used to altitude.
Any more thought into which half or full you'll do?
Still am, but I haven't made a decision. I don't know how my head is. In too many different places.
Well, you got a lot on your plate, huh?
Maybe then I'm like, should I do this race? Try to qualify for Worlds? But it's impaired. Correct. So I heard that with the standard they're hoping 50% of the field gets in. The other 50
Oh,
is with the other ways.
well, we need to know the other way.
Leaving it right here? Yeah.
Yeah. Really
As you can see, it's pretty humid.
strict.
Just drenched.
All out.
7 miles in.
To get the walk.
It's definitely, like I said, cooler than it has been, but sweat rate is high. But luckily, we've got Rick here, putting a table out every,
You're
I
like,
think like every 3 miles or
Oh,
so,
wow.
and Reem on the bike.
that was an easy start.
Super helpful. And
I'm not.
yeah, I'll take my first gel in a minute. Actually, I'll grab it from Reem. So 7 down, 15 to go.
I'm like, okay, let's hit the 640s. I'm like, oh, fuck. What's 7 left? We're down to 620s.
Going too fast. I don't even work.
No,
So it just flipped. Gradual downhill to Tom Watson. And yeah, Nell and I are at 11.8. So I'm just past halfway. Nell's got, we're doing 18 total or 20? 20.
20 total.
Yeah.
Last spot. Less than
Yeah.
4 miles.
Yeah.
Keeping around which pace? 540.
Oh,
Another mile and a half to go. And a mile cool down after this.
yeah. We're at 19.6, so
Almost there.
21 and then 1 mile cool down. It's getting really tough. We're about 540 still. Oh,
Almost there.
lost so much fluid. Oh my god. Oh god. They got infinitely harder once Lewis dropped out.
Oh yeah.
Probably mental, but
Yeah,
as
definitely.
soon as it's super helpful to have you there, but I think also we had a bit of a false sense of the speed coming down there at like 5:30s. And then when I hit this flat loop for the final 3 miles, I had in my mind to try and hold 5:30s and I just couldn't do it. Probably more like 5:40, 5:45, but we'll see the splits come up soon. Oh wow, that was probably harder than it should have been, honestly, but I started to just really overheat towards the end. I'm sure you guys are already tired of me saying that I'm overheating. I overheat every day, but when it's that long, over 2 hours, it's tough. Alright, mile cool down. Ideally I would have gotten straight into the cool down mile, but I'm struggling. So I'm gonna take a short walk and get into it. Thanks so much for filming, Nate.
Of course, anytime.
That's the second of I think 5 or 6 sort of long hard runs. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I mean, it was super helpful to have Nell and Lewis there for most of it. So thanks for following along. Next week I think we're back on the track for the video, so it'll be good. And yeah, appreciate all of you guys with the positive comments and so forth. Had a lot of questions about training in Boulder, which I haven't answered yet, and you can probably see by these videos it's such a good place to train. I mean, just perfect trails. The conditions are tough, but it is what it is.
Let's go to this cool down mile. Oh, my brain's fried. I've got nothing else to say, but thanks for following along.